There we go. So I'll kick it off. So thanks for letting us join in. So my name's Bobby Jalone. And obviously you can see on the screen, the Penta Building Group is who I work for. So real quick history about me. I'm actually a UNLV alumni from 2008, the construction management program. And my role right now with Penta is I'm on our special projects team. And I'm the one project manager for it. And before I took this role about 8 months ago, I was a senior superintendent for the company. So I've been with them since 2000, actually 2007. I was an intern for Penta, and then I got hired on when I graduated from UNLV. So a little bit about me. So I'm happy to be here.
And hello, my name is Matt Godino. I'm a senior project engineer for Penta as well. Graduated from UNLV CM in 2015. My first project in construction was actually T-Mobile Arena, so you guys might have heard of that one. I was actually on the subcontractor side, but I made the jump over to the general contracting side back in 2018.
So awesome. So just to give you a quick history about Penta, if you haven't heard of us before, we're a general contractor. We were founded in Las Vegas in 2000, so we're 20 years old right now. So far, and actually we have offices here in Las Vegas, Phoenix, Arizona, and then a couple offices around Southern California. So that's kind of our, we're staying to the southwest part of the United States. As of today, we've completed over $7 billion worth of work. So in 20 years, we think that's a pretty big accomplishment. We've had some ebbs and flows, but we've, like I said, throughout our history, we've done about 7 billion. We have about 200 employees right now, so we're still a small company, or what we consider a small company. So we consider ourselves an industry leader in Vegas, and then in the other, bigger ponds, we're definitely fighting to get a big chunk of it. And those last kind of 2 points on this slide, just kind of like I said, we consider ourselves a small company. We work in a cohesive family-like teams, and we build with passion and enthusiasm. So kind of one of our core beliefs is, really being a family-oriented company. So just one of those things, if you start hearing more about Penta, you'll see that we kind of operate a little bit different than some other companies. We really have a major focus on our families, and then some of the other things that we do with the community and other involvement that we have. But we always will hopefully consider ourselves a small company and be able to keep with that theme. So a little bit about Penta right there. And I think the next one may be for you, Matt.
Yep. What we do, it's a lot to present. We do a lot, but we offer services in pre-construction, construction, and closeout phases of a project. Everything from conceptual estimating, budget development. We get our hands involved in a lot of design assist type projects. Starting super early, and helping them really develop the design to a point that we're ready for when it comes time to start the building. The construction, we have a VDC department that helps us in the digital world bring things kind of together before we get into reality. We've got safety managers, quality control, contract administration, a lot of different focuses within the business side of the construction happen in that same construction phase. And then the closeout, we like to call that the last thing the owner remembers is how did we finally end the project? Was it on time, under budget? But additionally, how smooth does the punch list process go? The level of quality that they received and how much of a say they had in getting the corrections made. We do everything. We provide the training for the owner on the equipment that we install for them, and we also have a warranty process. We have to manage the warranty process and handling of claims for the period of time which their warranty is held. One of the things we wanted to focus on today is the role of the project engineer. Because for most of you, I imagine most of you are undergraduate, getting your bachelor's degrees. Going into the construction industry, this is kind of the first step for most people is taking on the role of the project engineer or PE. Like I said, myself, I am a senior project engineer, so I've had a good couple of years of experience in it. And I like to consider the PE, it's like privy to everything is what it stands for, not project engineer. One of the most critical responsibilities, you got RFIs, submittals, and we're heavily involved in the closeout process. Additionally, it's kind of easy for people to get caught up in the project engineering role. in thinking it's just kind of handling paperwork. You get the submittals from the subs and you turn them into the design team and get answers. But you don't need a degree or too much experience to hand paperwork off, right? We want to focus on getting good quality content out of subcontractors and good quality answers from design teams and owners to make sure that the project is successful. A couple items I got on the slide that I want to touch a little bit on is the RFIs or formal questions to the design team and owner. You want to document the answers you get and the questions that we're asking. Unfortunately, the drawings that you get are not always perfect. Most of the time, not. But especially here in Vegas, it's a very fast market. So there's a lot of things coming out really quick in regards to design updates and changes and dollars getting passed around. So it's very important that you document the questions and the answers appropriately. It's not just getting the answer, it's actually having an understanding of the impact of that answer and making sure the owner understands it too. Because sometimes the answer that you get is going to impact cost. It could impact the design entirely. And if you're not careful, you can end up moving forward on something that the owner doesn't actually want. So, like I said, it's not just passing through paperwork and handing off answers, it's understanding the answers that you received and really processing that information from a technical level. Submittals, very similar. You've got product data, shop drawings, and product samples are kind of the most typical submittals that we see. And, just handing it off isn't enough because subcontractors, understandably, they have to focus on what it is that they need to get their job done. And sometimes that doesn't always work with with what the other subcontractors need. So the project engineer has a responsibility to look at the submittal from one sub to another sub that it might affect and say, okay, what does this really mean and what is this doing? And, additionally, does it meet the design intent? Sometimes the architects have a conceptual detail and they'll say, this is what we want it to look like at the end of the day, but the means and methods of how you get there, they don't necessarily define. And when a subcontractor comes and presents something in regards to their submittal, sometimes it doesn't actually meet the design intent. Sometimes the design intent isn't possible the way that it's currently reflected. And it's our job to catch that. As project engineers, you're on the front line. Project managers don't always see this information first. Superintendents don't always see this information first. It usually filters through us. And so it's our job to make sure everybody really understands what's going on out there. And then again, the closeout process, the punch list process, and handing over all the final documentation. On the Win South convention, which I worked with Bobby, we handed over 25 binders of information over to the owner at the end of the job, and it had to be organized and it had to be uniform. All 25 binders had to look exactly the same section by section. And that's part of our job too. It's not the most fun part of our job, but it is part of our job. Like I said, there's a lot of varied perceptions to what a project engineer does. And admittedly, coming out of college, I thought I understood what a project engineer did. And once you get into the job, you learn pretty quick. There's a lot to it that maybe you weren't expecting, and that's kind of why we wanted to focus a little attention on it and make sure you guys really understood, what you're going to be getting into, and just kind of let you know that you need to be prepared to really dig into details. It's not just handing off paperwork. It takes a lot of thought, and it's very rewarding if you challenge yourself, and you can really make yourself stand out by being strong and really focusing on that level of detail. Additionally, for some of you, I know not everybody here is going to be getting into the construction side of business, but the internship opportunities, I focus on that just because that's where we really start developing people out of college. And these are things that are offered, PENTA or otherwise. We've got estimating in the pre-construction side. You've got sales and marketing. It is a business at the end of the day. We have plenty of employees on staff that are not just focusing on the construction side of things, but they do have to sell a product, and the product is us. So, it's showing off the projects that we've done and putting presentations together and budgets and getting us work. Without them, we don't have anything to build. Additionally, I mentioned earlier the VDC department, 3D modeling. We recently opened up a drone program where we're training people how to actually operate drones and getting them certified and doing flyovers of projects and using it for all sorts of interesting tools to help a project move along. And then the clash detection and the 3D modeling. We've got subcontractors all provide their models of what they're going to build, and we put them all together, and and see how they work. Things run into each other, and we can, catch those things early, so we're not having to fix it in the field later. It's really interesting stuff, and we do have opportunities for interns to learn that stuff early before you even graduate. Additionally, the construction opportunities for interns, really, really strong. I really wish I had gotten an internship in college, previous to starting, because the interns that we have, they're little miniature project engineers. We throw them right in there, and they might not have as much responsibility, but they do the same work. And by the time they graduate, they really understand what a construction process is, and really understand how to be a good project engineer. Focusing on sequence of construction, generating RFIs and submittals, and actually reviewing them. Again, not just passing paperwork, but understanding the content, the quality of that content. Coordination with other trades. We have them out there talking to subcontractors and solving problems. And one of the things we talked about a little bit, myself and Bobby, is incorporating the classroom material that you are currently absorbing and really combining it with that school of hard knocks. It's like Bobby said, there's a language, you're learning the language of construction right now and how it pieces together. And then once you get out, that knowledge will really help you moving forward in the construction industry as a project engineer or otherwise, and really incorporating that knowledge. So it's the internship program is really, really good, and I recommend it, that you guys find an internship program out there. If not us, anybody, hopefully us. But it's very valuable, very valuable.
One thing there too, Matt, we wanted to talk about real quick. If anybody did log on early, they heard us talking a little bit about, we call it the Reno Competition. It's up in Reno, usually every February. It's probably gonna be a little different in 2021, but it's called the ASC competition. So Penta's involved with it. That's where we actually hire. Last year, I think we hired every intern we had from up there. There's 10,000 students that go up there from schools all across the Western United States. They actually have a division it's an open division where schools come from back east to it also. There's 70 to 80, I think, employers there. So companies going to hire people. It's probably one of the best exposures you can get to those companies and getting a job or getting an internship. So if you haven't heard about it through UNLV, I know the construction management team through UNLV is sort of starting to go up there. They've actually won it, I think, 2 years in the last 4 or 5 years. So they've been representing and getting stronger every year. I think we send 2 teams up there now. Some of the other colleges in the Western United States send 15 teams. So mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, heavy civil. There's a lot of different programs that are going up in there. And these guys, like I said, these schools are sending, there's 6 students on a team. So they're sending 70 students probably with alternates up there to be in this competition. So if you haven't heard of it before, the Reno Competition, ASC competition, happens in February up in Reno. Google it, find it, and then if you can, talk to your program leader, somebody in your school. It's something like I said, we were talking about before we started today. Probably some of the best exposure you can get to 60 to 70 of those companies. So keep that in mind. I just wanted to add that in before we got onto this next topic. So this is about business and construction, I think, is the main theme of this presentation today. One of the things that we talked about is safety in construction. So, Penta always likes to hit on this. This is definitely the most important thing in our philosophy of business. I looked up a couple stats before we started. According to OSHA, behind logging and commercial fishing, construction is probably one of the most dangerous jobs in the country. So obviously, if you're on this presentation or listening and you're in school, you're not necessarily the one that wants to go out there, or you're not training to go out there to be the guy or girl swinging the hammer and doing the physical work. But we still see it that we're partners with those men and women. They go out there and they're going, if they're painting a room, that's one thing. If they're hanging steel, that's another thing. So there's different levels of danger, definitely. But every day that those men and women walk onto a job site with us, they're potentially putting their life on the line for a paycheck. So we like I said, I'm not doing the physical work, but I'm still a partner with those men and women. And I'm out there to watch their back and make sure, that they're, those risks are lowered and they're controlled. So kind of one of the things you'll hear go through the industry, but especially with Penta, I think I've heard every superintendent say it, we want you going home the same way you came in. So on our construction job, if you walked in with 10 fingers, I want you walking out with 10 fingers. So it obviously goes to a little different level than that, but one of those things, safety is still the most important part. The paycheck is important, but you need to go home the same way you came to work. So one of those things we definitely like to touch on, and it's gonna, like I said, it goes across the actual business of construction too. Safety is definitely the number one concern, and it always should be. So, kind of going past that, one of the things kind of in the business, Matt, if you want to go to the next slide. So obviously one of the biggest topics we have right now is the COVID, COVID, what's going on right now. So kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about, you see on the slide, essential service. So in March, Vegas shut down. The strip was actually dark. That's never happened in our history. I've been here. I was born and raised in Las Vegas. My mom's been here since 1961. So, I have a family roots in this town. I've never seen the strip go dark like that. It was very different. But in those times when the hospitality industry wasn't deemed essential, construction was. So, why was construction deemed essential? So a couple stats, behind the hospitality industry that we have here, construction's the second largest industry in Las Vegas. We need construction. It's, between 60 and I had 68,000 jobs is what it provides every year. And construction jobs are usually very good paying jobs. So there's less people in construction than there is hospitality. But, again, those are good paying jobs that support the economy. So when that March hit, and there was a lot of discussions with Governor Sisolak and his team about what we were going to do about construction. Were we going to deem it essential? Ultimately, they did. But what happened is industry leaders got together, a lot of general contractors, subcontractors were working with the task force to keep construction open. So we worked with the COVID guidelines. We helped make them for construction. We worked with Nevada OSHA. We worked with OSHA to get those guidelines, those safety guidelines in place so we could keep working. So not only did they deem it essential to keep the construction going, that was going, the Raider Stadium, that was important. That was one of the biggest ones talked about. Were we going to shut it down? So they were able to keep it going. So obviously feeding the economy at that time was very important. But one thing about construction is we're essential. We have to keep building buildings for when the economy comes back. The buildings have to be there for people to go back to work. So, not only important that we keep people's paychecks, coming, but also the tail end of that where we're building buildings and all types of things that people need to go back to work. So we're very fortunate that they deemed it essential. I've been able to work this whole time. A lot of people have. There's definitely been some hurt that's happened to the industry, just like the whole country. But we were fortunate. We were deemed essential. We were able to keep working. So, and kind of one of the notes I have on my sheet here is the economy is kind of a waterfall effect on construction, and kind of explaining that. It seems like, so when 2008 hit, we didn't build a high rise in Las Vegas for 10 years. So there was a huge learning curve, or a huge loss of learning that happened in those 10 years. Lots of guys retired. So when we go to build high rises again in 2017, 2018, there was a huge loss of knowledge. So even though the economy had recovered, it had this long effect on construction that seemed to last about 10 years. So I know that was probably one of the reasons why they wanted to keep construction going. If we got it shut down, and let's say the economy comes back and comes back quicker, construction would suffer longer. So they were trying to avoid that kind of tail end or that waterfall effect. So again, that's one of the things that task force worked with a lot of industry leaders to keep construction going. And we're, all very thankful for it. And fortunately for you, guys and girls on the phone, you're getting into an industry that's essential. So if this ever happens again, I'm hoping that we can all keep working and, keep the economy going. So along with that, kind of one of the other things talking about, business and construction, community involvement. So PENTA is very fortunate, with good paying jobs at construction workers. When you have a good paying job, you have money to donate. And when you have money to donate, a lot of the people that work in construction also have skills that not a lot of people have. Those tradesmen and women that are actually building buildings, not a lot of people know how to build a building. So a lot of the people that can't necessarily donate their money, donate their time, it runs rampant through our industry, which is awesome, that people love donating their time to, rebuilding together is one of them that I see a lot that we're involved with. We're helping people fix their houses and rebuild houses to the less fortunate, folks that are in town. And there's a lot of money that we're fortunate we're able to donate to, but the time and the skill that people are able to donate and give back to their community is awesome. And it's not just PENTA, it really runs really deep in the blood, I think, of this construction community. So we have something called PENTA Cares. So it's a wing of PENTA that fortunately exists because PENTA exists. It kind of goes back to it. We're still a business. And, we're fortunate. We're a profitable company. So we're able to make this other company called PENTA Cares. We work with ACE Mentorship. That's a high school program. Actually, Matt works with it. We work with Rebuilding Together. We do a lot of blood drives that people donate, not necessarily their time, but they're donating their time and their blood to the community. We actually do a golf tournament every year where we raise about $150,000 for the Women's Development Center, Childhood Cancer Foundation, and the Nevada Military Support Alliance. So again, that's where we're fortunate enough that we and all of our subcontractor partners are able to donate a lot of money to these programs in town that do a lot of good for the community. So again, with a business being successful, the positive impact that we have on the community is just, it flows through the whole community, which is awesome. So, and that kind of leads to the next point where, again, we're able to have PENTA Cares because, we're a profitable business. We aren't in this to lose money. We're in it to make money, keep people employed. And ultimately, what I think a lot of people like to do, stay safe on the job, but donate back to the community. So with that, the business side of construction, Matt kind of stole my thunder a little bit earlier, talking about, what you're learning in school right now, mainly focused on the construction management students, because that's where I came from. But you're learning a language, it's a construction language. You need to learn how to build a building, but you're learning a business language. So ultimately, you're going to go throughout your career, you're going to learn how to build buildings, how to coordinate it, how to work with all different types of people. But it's ultimately a business language that you're learning. And as you move through your career, you're going to realize, we have a lot of the same challenges as a different kind of business has. So definitely one of those things, learning the language is important. But we ultimately still want to make a profit, in our business, which again makes PENTA Cares, gives us the opportunity to donate to the community like we do. So looking at a couple of the things on this, the business side of construction, definitely one of the most essential skills we talked about. It's definitely tough with COVID going on right now. Different ways of communication. We're all getting a lot better than we ever thought of being able to communicate on the computer through, video chats and all the different ways of communication. So in construction, I've definitely found, from a professional meeting where you're presenting in front of a board of directors or an owner, is definitely different than when you're going to what we call a toolbox talk, when you're working with people that are in the trades, and you have to be able to have those different ways of communication and be able to present to a board of directors compared to a bunch of guys that are going to work for the day, and guys and girls. It's definitely a different group, and it's a different way of communication. And if you can kind of expand your ways and being able to communicate with both, it's pretty much a needed skill kind of in where our industry is, of being able to do both. So, being able to communicate verbally in those meetings or in those toolbox talks, emails, phone calls, presentations, the more well-rounded you can become in the different ways you can communicate, it all eventually comes into play when you're in the construction industry for sure. So, and professional relationships, why we kind of put this on this slide, definitely, which is at the heart of PENTA for sure, is, Vegas is a very small town. So being able to have those relationships with people and having repeat clients is super important. Even in the larger markets is important. So being able to build that relationship, it's not always just contracts and paper. You definitely have to have relationships with people. It's still people that write those contracts, and it's still people that sign those contracts. So being able to have those professional relationships is extremely important. So again, that's a skill you develop as you go throughout your career, but be aware of it and be cognizant when you're forming a relationship with a new client or a new business partner. You may be doing it today and you may be good at it today, and that's going to carry through the rest of your career. So, and then one more I like to talk about, conflict management, very, very difficult to get good at, because nobody, generally in human nature, you don't like to argue. But how your style is when you have conflict management, how you argue with people is important, and you have to be able to do it different ways. You have different people that respond differently to the ways that you talk to them. So being able to have your own style on conflict management is important, and being able to necessarily adjust that conflict management style is important. So it's almost that know your audience that comedians hear about. Know your audience on how you're going to talk to somebody that may not be a very pleasant conversation, and if you can, be able to adjust to the conflict and to that person. So definitely an important skill. Definitely one of the more important ones on a job site is being able to talk to different people. Some people respond to yelling, some people don't. So you need to be able to know when the differences of how you react and how you talk to people when you need something to get done for a job or for whatever. So conflict management is definitely important. It's probably one of the most important skills you can develop through your career. And attention to detail kind of speaks for itself. I was going to breeze through these a little quick. If Matt can jump in if he wants to, but definitely have to have attention to detail. Usually engineering students don't struggle with that. But definitely as you move through your career, hanging on to that and really being able to have that attention to detail often will separate you from somebody else, and being able to really find those problems before they're bigger problems, and being able to really dig in to problems, to drawings, to whatever is really important. So, and everybody loves accounting. So, it's in there. It's definitely one of the things we'll talk about in a minute too. Ultimately, a lot of construction companies that they're accounting firms that build buildings. We worked with a joint venture in LA. That was the big joke. They're an accounting firm that's a construction company. We still ultimately build buildings and build things, but being able to be good at accounting or understand how to be profitable in a business is very important. So if you can't be profitable, you won't survive. So definitely one of those things. If you hate accounting, you may want to rethink that even in construction. So it's definitely important. So I don't need to go into too much more detail about accounting, but definitely important. Embrace it if you have to. So anything else on those, Matt, you want to talk about kind of on the business side?
Yeah, no, the ability to communicate with the different types of people. I mean, it's not even just the field teams versus the higher levels of management and CEOs and having those conversations. I mean, there's differences in conversations between whether or not you're talking to an iron worker, an electrician, or an elevator guy. That was one of the things that I learned very quickly. Is coming out of college, is that my personal style of communication isn't always the right version of communication. At the end of the day, when you are communicating or trying to get direction to proceed, there is a lot of nuance in understanding, again, who your audience is, who you're talking to. Some people respond very well to you saying, hey, go build that wall. And some people will build the worst wall in the world, and some people will build the perfect one with that little communication. Other people, they need that level of detail, and that attention to detail. I'm always talking about, hey, build a wall and make it this tall and make it this wide and paint it this color and this level of finish. It really just depends on who you're talking to, and learning your audience before you provide that direction is a very critical skill that I've developed just being in construction over the last couple of years. And then the attention to detail that I meant, that ties into everything I was talking about earlier. That is your job as a project engineer, is to dig into details, and understand the details before it becomes a problem. So yeah, no, all of these are these are definitely the big five for sure.
So a little bit, this was kind of most of the meat of our presentation there. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about kind of that potential career path in construction that you may have. So Matt's talked about, being an intern, being a project engineer, kind of moving up, and that's pretty common across the general contracting world, especially even the subcontractor side. But kind of one of the things that I've actually talked to a lot of UNLV students about when they kind of start getting a better idea about the industry is, and Penta follows the industry pretty commonly, where, once you become a project engineer and you start moving up, there is kind of a stepping stone in a career a few years in, if you want to be on the project manager side or the superintendent side. So, definitely like more CM focused, but when you're in a general contracting firm, that is kind of that stepping stone point. And a lot of people think, well, I have to pick one or the other. And that's not necessarily true. So kind of, like I said, my background, I was an intern for Penta. I was a project engineer for Penta. So in 2012, I got promoted and I was a PM. I went that PM side. but I have a good aptitude for what happens in the field. So I was a PM for 5 years, and then I actually got convinced by Penta that I would have value in the company still as a superintendent. So I had a background as a project manager, which a project manager generally controls the cost and the contracts of a job. A superintendent usually controls the field and the schedule of a job. So in Penta, that's a married partnership. They're equals in that. So I was a project manager for years. They wanted some more project manager experience in a superintendent position. So they asked me if I wanted to switch over. So I did. I feel like I've been pretty successful as a superintendent, senior superintendent. Now I'm back as another role as a senior PM. So why I'm kind of telling you guys a little bit of this story is a lot of people, again, when I talk to people coming out of school, UNLV or other colleges, I'm going to have a defined role when I get to a certain point. That's not necessarily true. I had a role that I liked. I was convinced to do another one that I liked. And I've now bounced back and forth a few times, which has made the tools in my toolbox even more plentiful. So I have experience on both sides. I actually did a lot of VDC when I was an engineer. We didn't have a VDC department when I was there. So I did a lot of that 3D modeling myself. I still talk about it every day to our director of VDC, he's a good friend of mine. We talk about it, but I can give him a perspective from a superintendent side to the VDC department. So again, the general theme of this business is definitely when you get in it, you may think that you have a certain route, but when that stepping stone, when that time comes where you have to make a choice, make the choice, be bold about it. And that doesn't mean you're necessarily stuck there. I've never believed that. And I'm kind of testimony that I wasn't stuck there. Again, I had more value to the company doing something different because they really needed that kind of role. So, and I think Matt's probably kind of at that stepping stone of his career, senior PE, and he's going to be kind of taking a role, I'm sure, on his next job as one of those. So I don't know if you want to go into that a little bit, Matt, or not.
Yeah, certain. So, one of the things I'm glad that you mentioned is that the two different toolboxes, right? You need to have some tools in one and the other. They complement each other, and different projects, even at the project engineer level, have different demands. You'll get on a project like the one that I was on with Bobby that had 8 superintendents running around over at the Wind South Convention, and so the demand on the project engineer in the field was a little more heavy in supporting the superintendents in regards to whatever they needed. And it was, I was spending probably about 50% of my time in the field, 50% of my time at the desk. And then the project I'm on right now, I'm on a job in Arizona, and I'm spending 99.9% of my time in the field and then wrapping up at the end of the day sitting at my desk and catching up. And the tools that I had learned over at the Win and tools that I'm learning right now are really going to develop me in both ways. So when I first started at Penta, it was a very clear path for me. I said, okay, I'm going to be a project engineer, then I'm going to go and be a project manager. And that was reinforced a little bit during my time at the Win, but now that I've had all this field experience, it's gotten a little fuzzy. So to Bobby's point, I'm glad that there's a little bit of that flexibility. It's a nice, refreshing thing, because I was under the same impression that the students that Bobby mentioned, coming out of school were that it was very, kind of rigid, and you have to kind of make your call, and then that sends you off. And I learned at Win that wasn't how it went after meeting Bobby. But yeah, this conversation just continues to reinforce that. And if you know what a project manager knows as a superintendent, you're going to be a stronger superintendent, because you're going to know the issues that you're going to run into on the budget side of things and on the business side of things. And as a project manager, knowing how the superintendent's going to have to operate and react to things in the field is going to help you be, more prepared as a project manager to handle those costs and what to do about them. So that's really all I have to add.
Yeah, that's awesome, Matt. So that's our presentation, everybody. I really appreciate you letting us come on today, and I'm happy that some of you were able to join. And wanted to open it up. If I haven't seen any of the questions come through on the chat, other than it looks like one, Alexandria, I hope I got that right. She's one of the captains for the ASC team. So if anybody is interested in getting into those competitions, she's probably a good resource to start. And then depending on what, if you're mechanical engineering or electrical or whatever you are, definitely start with her, and you can start kind of attacking that. I think it's probably one of the best opportunities to meet employers, to get some awesome experience and a real pressure cooker. You'll learn about it a little bit, and would be a great opportunity for any of the programs at UNLV to get involved with. So.
Matt and Bobby, this is Marion. I just want to say great presentation, and students, please take advantage of this right now. If you have some questions, you can just unmute your mic directly, or you can put your question in the chat, whatever you're more comfortable with. So let's just give them an opportunity to ask you some direct questions.
Cool.
Hey, Matt, I have a question for Matt.
Sure.
So you mentioned your first job was the T-Mobile Arena?
Yes, it was.
What was like one of the, I know there was a lot of challenges, I'm assuming, what was like one of the biggest challenges, and maybe something like interesting about that project?
Sure. So one of the biggest challenges that we had on that job was the company I worked for. It was SME Steel, and so I was on the steel side. And that being, I kind of figured when I started the CM program, I kind of thought the first thing I was going to build was a smog station. I didn't think it was going to be an arena, so that was a little bit daunting at first, just to kind of absorb that. But when you're building an arena, and again, in Vegas being a fast-paced market, and there's a lot of changes happening, and design drawings are being generated really quickly, and a lot of revisions are coming through. The management of all that information coming through so quickly was definitely the biggest challenge. A lot of changes, a lot of fixes needing to happen, because a certain structural detail didn't quite pan out the way it was supposed to. It was really time management, because it's a lot of information to have to organize and kind of keep the information flowing smoothly on. So, learning how to manage your time is actually a key, regardless of whether or not you're in construction or any other field. Time management is a critical thing to learn. And, looking at your to-do list, because it's not ever going to get shorter. It's your to-do list just always grows, and then you lose a couple, and then it grows by a little more. So, learning to prioritize tasks appropriately. And which things can wait, which things need to happen right now, and also recognizing that you're a human being, and at some point you need to go home and not just keep cranking out work. Like, those are the biggest challenges for sure. Unfortunately, because I was on the steel side, I didn't necessarily get to see too many really cool, fancy things happen over at T-Mobile, because by the time we were off the job, they were starting the finishes. I guess one thing that was really interesting and cool, though, was watching the trusses get installed. Those trusses are just massive. If you've been in there, you've looked up and you see them. They are huge, huge, heavy trusses. And the big challenge there was that every time we picked one of those up, we had to have two cranes working in tandem to call it a tandem pick. And that's a very, very dangerous task, because if one crane tugs a little too hard, it can be pretty disastrous. And so there's a lot of planning and thought that goes into that process. And when that truss is getting picked, everybody needs to be on the same page as to what's happening, who's allowed in the building and where, and where can't they be. That is a really interesting thing to watch. If you go on YouTube, I'm sure you can look up, tandem crane pick and see some cool videos of it. That was a really fun thing to watch. And here in Vegas, everybody's trying to get away from columns. No one wants to see columns in the building. They want big open spaces. And so the tandem picks are becoming very common in regards to the construction of a project, because you got to get the big heavy trusses in, so you don't need columns there. So I hope that answers your question.
So I saw one question come through from Kevin on the chat, asking about if we have any open positions for interns right now. Right now, we don't. We actually, it's funny, we have two students from UNLV that when we hire on, so our internship program is always over the summer. Generally, we bring a lot of kids in from UNLV and other schools throughout the Western United States, but we actually recruit from a couple other schools in the Midwest too. So we usually have that summer internship program. And then if you're local, those two have gotten hired on full time. So they stay with us. They work reduced hours, but they're still very important team members. So a couple of those people are working right now. And then we are starting, we don't have any open positions right now, but I mean, of course, there's a lot of depends right now in the world on how industry opens back up and what we're looking like come May of next year. But this is usually about the time towards the end of the year and the very start of the year where we start looking for the interns for next summer. So even though we don't have them right now, Kevin or anybody else on the phone, definitely get a resume ready. And if you want to send us a resume, this is when we start looking through them, start getting them all collected. And then, early next year is when we start trying to hire those interns for the summertime. So hopefully that answered your question, Kevin. Not right now, but definitely for next summer, we'll have some open and get your resume ready and definitely get it over to us. So
I'm going to jump in here because this is where I want them to know about engineering career services. So guys, send me your resume first. Let me review it first, and let me make sure it's in perfect condition before it goes to Bobby and before it goes to Matt, because we want them to get the best possible resume from you. Right, so just email marion.mason@unlv.edu with your resume, and let's just take a couple of minutes and we'll work on it. I think you've got some other questions too.
Yeah, I'm going to take this next one too. Matt can jump in, but do you have any tips for what could help set us apart when preparing to hit the job market after graduation? So experience, obviously, and I mean, I look for guys and girls that have experience, not necessarily in construction. They have some of that management or conflicts management, experience or what they've done in the past. I look for, volunteer work like Rebuilding Together, where you have maybe just a little bit of construction experience. I work for my dad's construction company. That I always ask about that when I see on a resume. Not everybody obviously has the opportunity to do that, but any type of volunteering with that Rebuilding Together type stuff is always interesting for me to ask about. And then I'll tell you, probably one of the biggest things I look for is that Reno competition. That is probably one of the most realistic 24 hours or 36-hour competitions you can do, that I know what you go through. And I watch a lot of presentations, how it works. You do a problem statement for 24 hours and then you present on it the next day. So I watch a lot of those, and I really love seeing that on a resume. Whenever I see somebody participated in the Reno competition on their resume, I always ask, what problem did they present on? What was your position on the team? How did you do? So that's definitely one of those things. If you can get that type of experience on your resume, is really important. OSHA certs are definitely important. I always go back to that Reno competition. I love seeing it on there. I love asking about it. So don't know if you have anything else, Matt, that you like seeing on resumes, or kind of what else you'd want to talk about there.
Yeah, no, I'd say just as a more general thing, any extracurricular items that show that you've taken on additional interest beyond what you're learning in the classroom. If you got clubs, competitions like Bobby mentioned, anything like that really sets you apart. You've got a lot of your classmates coming out with probably similar grades. So anything that sets you apart other than I got my degree is good. As Bobby mentioned, it's additional talking points, it's additional experience beyond the classroom. That would for sure be the big one. I would agree with that.
All right, I'll let you go first on this next one, Matt, because I think I've got my answer. But what was one of your favorite classes at UNLV in the CM program?
I really enjoyed the equipments course with the Colonel. That one was fun.
That's the one that I enjoyed too. That's funny.
That was a fun one. I guess it makes sense that I ended up working for a steel company for a while, because the steel design course with Doug Rounds was a really good time. I know Doug's tough, but I learned a lot, and I actually had fun with that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen the Colonel in years. He actually helped when we were doing some of the presentations for the very first years of the Reno competition. I think he came a few times and gave feedback to the students. So I thought I heard a vicious rumor that he may have retired, which is a loss, because the Colonel was awesome. He did my capstone too when I was in 2008. He was in charge of that, and he was tough. He challenged us hard, but the capstone class when I was there was kind of like the Reno competition spread over a whole semester instead of just 24 hours. But I liked that. That was a tough class, and it was a tough, the Colonel was tough, but having all the industry experience that he had is what I liked. And then I don't know if Charlie's still there anymore or not, but Charlie had our introduction to construction class, which was great. And then I think he taught one or two other classes. the classes I enjoyed, but those two guys are who I really enjoyed learning from, a bunch. So let's see, what else do we got on here? Civil engineering. So we got something from Allison. Civil engineering freshman doing undergrad research and transportation. What types of projects can interns work for? Do you offer projects in different civil engineering areas like wastewater, transportation, and structural? Not as much, Allison. We do mainly, general commercial construction. So stuff like that where we do have civil subcontractors involved. We usually subcontract it out and they work for us when we do larger civil stuff. We don't usually self-perform that. We don't get into wastewater too much or transportation. Structural, we always do, but we're working with the engineers. So depending on, in the engineering programs, I know you kind of go on either the design side or the construction side. So we're definitely not a design firm. We're more on the construction side. So depending on where your experience is what kind of we offer. But not as much kind of what you're talking about. We do mainly general construction. So, and then I got one more. Any software that students should know coming out of college as a CM major? Matt, what do you think the most important software is that they should know?
Bluebeam. I live in Bluebeam. Yeah. So for those of you not familiar, Bluebeam is a PDF management and modification tool.
Took over for Adobe.
Yeah, Adobe. Yeah, very similar to that. But I live in that program. A good chunk of my day is spent in there. Oasis or on-screen takeoff. Using that takeoff tool, I actually learned a lot about estimating this summer, working on a project. Ended up helping out with the estimating of that project and setting up the budget for that one. So if you know that program and you're proficient, it's very similar to Bluebeam too. It's they work really well together. If you know one, the other's pretty easy to learn.
Yeah, and depending on what your aptitude is and what you really enjoy, if you have a little bit of that background in 3D modeling, we don't actually do a lot of the modeling. We do a fair amount, but a lot of the subcontractors do when you talk about VDC and coordinating clash detection, stuff like that. If you're comfortable in Autodesk, I know there's a big change coming in Autodesk right now, especially on the licensing side, but if you're comfortable in Autodesk, CAD, Navisworks, Revit, that's definitely a good tool to have in your box. It's not one that's definitely critical, but if you have that tool, it will come up. It will be utilized. If you have some background in that, it's definitely one thing. When I see it on a resume, it's another one I ask about. So if you have an aptitude for it, if you enjoy it, sometimes that can get a little tough. You have to have a little bit different mindset to really dig into using those programs. But if that's one you like or you've had a little bit of liking to it, definitely expand on that. Definitely one thing you'd want to list on your resume and be able to speak to, because I ask some hard questions sometimes when I see somebody has Revit experience. I ask them exactly what they did, and sometimes you just list it because you took a week-long class in Revit. So if you're gonna list it, definitely have some experience in it, and like I said, if you enjoy it, definitely amplify it on your resume for sure.
And I'd like to add, because I guess I did a bit of a disservice not including Navis. While I don't necessarily model, knowing how to manipulate the model and how to move through the model and show things to people, especially when you're doing a job that has like a clash detection, understanding how to utilize Navis as a tool, even if you aren't the one doing the modeling itself, that's also a program you should learn how to use.
And I got one more for you, Matt. You mentioned utilizing drones for flyovers during inspections. Can interns also work with drones as well?
I would need to talk to Cliff to verify for sure, but I am 90% certain that yes, we do. Our VDC department does allow the interns to fly the drones and teaches them what they need to know to fly a drone as well.
Yeah, and a couple of our people now are true certified drone pilots. So you have to get a certain FAA certification if you're not a hobbyist, I think is how it's defined. So we've actually have a couple people that are allowed to fly them within 5 miles of airports. They have to file a flight program, I'm pretty sure. So we've invested in that because we see how important it is and being able to have the freedom to use it on a professional level. So I don't know if they'll let you fly it by the airport, but they'll definitely let you give it a try in some other spots. So if that's something that interests you, definitely something we'd definitely talk about. So, and I don't know, I think we have all DJI drones. I saw Allison ask that. So I think a Phantom 3 is what I saw in the office the other day. So we're always, we love investing in technology probably a little too much sometimes. So we usually, I'm sure we got new drones on the way too. So one more, what projects are you both currently working on? So right now I'm based in Las Vegas. I'm working on our special projects division. So kind of another word for special projects is small projects. So with the kind of turn of the economy, we definitely have focused on some of our repeat clients that are doing some of the smaller jobs that we generally aren't kind of in our wheelhouse we're looking at. So I'm working on 4 or 5 jobs all at the same time and getting new ones coming in the door and one's getting done all the time. So I'm in what our, we call it our special projects division that I'm working in right now.
Right. And then for myself, so I am, normally in Vegas, but demand called for a little bit of help out here in Arizona. So right now I'm working on the Talking Stick Resort out in Scottsdale, Arizona, near Phoenix, like the Henderson for Phoenix. So I'm out here on that. We're doing a high limit space for them. So taking building out a new space for high limit gaming, going to convert their old high limit gaming into additional kind of slots and regular gaming area, and then building a restaurant for them.
Excellent. Anybody else have any questions? I think we got about 5 minutes left in our webinar today. Excellent presentation, Matt and Bobby. PENTA has always been one of my favorite companies. CEM, CEE students, you know what? This is a great organization. So I can't speak highly enough of PENTA. They have been at everything we've ever done, whether it's been an engineering career fair or the mock speed interviews or the hire an engineer. We're going to do a networking event hopefully next spring, and they'll probably be there for that as well. But reach out to these guys. Guys, are you comfortable giving your email addresses, or would that be something I could shoot out to the students later?
I think I can email them both, give you my whole digital card, and you can share with anybody, any of the students you want to.
Yep, I just dropped it in the chat as well.
Okay, and there's Matt's right there, guys. So you're very lucky to have people that are willing to chat with you. These are alums. They always have a soft spot for students at UNLV, which is great. We really appreciate that. So interesting to hear that construction is an essential business too, and what a great opportunity to choose a career that is deemed an essential business. That was a really interesting part of your presentation. I didn't realize that, but it made perfect sense. So we feel like you're essential to UNLV. We really appreciate you both for spending an hour with us. Students, same with you. We appreciate you attending, because without you attending and engaging with these employers, this wouldn't happen. So spread the news and tell your friends that we will continue to offer these kinds of webinars and workshops, whether they're virtual or whether they are in person later, but we'll do them every semester. So let us know what you want to hear about and who you want to hear from, and we'll try to set them up. With that, I'm going to thank everybody very much, and I think we're going to hit it right at 5 o'clock, or very close to it. So thank you, Matt and Bobby, and thank you, students, for coming. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Really appreciate it, guys.